Good evening, everyone. My name is Kyle Anderson, and this is Albert Camus, famous Nobel Literature Prize winner and famous author as well.
Thank you for having me. Comment ça va?
Oui.
Oui.
Thank you for coming back from the dead to do this interview.
My greatest honor. I wouldn't come back for anyone else.
First question. How would you explain your philosophy of the absurd to someone who is either unfamiliar or trying to get into your works?
Absurdity is very straightforward. Life, the way we live it, is not compatible with the way the universe is. We live in a very primitive way, naturally, and we add all of this order we do not need. Our realization of this is what I call absurdity. It is man's confrontation with the juxtaposition of how we live in this world.
Beautifully said.
Thank you very
In
much.
your book, The Rebel, you discuss rebellion as a response to life's absurdity. Do you believe rebellion is the only meaningful response, or are there other ways to confront life's absurdity in your eyes?
There are ways you can live with it. Once one accepts absurdity and accepts this way of life and how we live within it, we may find ways to exist with it. Finding personal freedom, personal meaning, pursuing it in whatever way you see fit is, in a way, also rebellion, but a more calm path. A more easy, peaceful way to cope with absurdity.
Oui.
Oui.
Your most famous quote is, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy." How do you reconcile the absurdity of life with the pursuit of happiness?
Well, in my book, I talk about the myth of Sisyphus as told by the Greeks. The original myth of Sisyphus pushing rock up the mountain forever. Futile task. This directly reflects the absurd nature of living. I don't know what that was. Sorry, Albert Camus, you must know, in your history books when you study me, I'm very, very cigarette smoker, very hard. This is a personal vice of mine. Personal vices are very important in the fight against absurdity. So, like Sisyphus, we have this futile task, this infuriating task of having to deal with the nausea, as my influence Jean-Paul Sartre would call it, nausea, of handling this order we are forced to live in this very absurd world. That fight is, in a way, the pursuit of happiness, because it invokes the indomitable human spirit. That is my answer.
You are known as one of the greatest authors and philosophers of the 20th century.
Ah, merci beaucoup.
What other philosophers inspired you, and what also inspired you to inherit the philosophy that life is absurd and has no meaning?
It's a very good question. I have many influences. Other Frenchmen, Jean-Paul Sartre, his wife, Simone de Beauvoir, Franz Kafka, incredible author, writes a Metamorphosis, very absurd. Big fan of his work as a child. I read Kierkegaard in university. Disagree with him completely now. I agree with Nietzsche in some senses of his existential meaninglessness, but he is too negative. Nihilism is not the answer. Kafka is my biggest influence.
Big fan of bugs.
Very wise man. Yes. Gregor Samsa. Wake up as a bug. What is to do if you wake up as a bug? Your whole life is flipped upside down. What is more absurd than this? Your whole life flips upside down. You live in the USSR. You cannot provide for your family because you're a bug. Very absurd. Very phenomenal metaphor for the absurdity of life. Big fan of Kafka.
Indeed. How does one accept
Indubitably.
life's absurdity, make it their own, and overcome it?
It's very difficult task. You see this fire? This is the fire that needs to be burning inside of you when you face such absurdity, such struggle with the reality of living. So, to accept absurdism is a natural step in the realization of absurdism. You realize this, like any other issue, you must find a solution. Whether that be, for some it is a vice, some will just ignore it, push it down, others will pursue their personal wants, their personal needs, and with this comes a natural acceptance to the absurd, because you will find this is Eastern philosophy, but you'll find what is called a feng shui. It's a natural path to life, the easiest path, like water, like Bruce Lee says. Yes, acceptance it comes naturally. You just have to understand that this is how we live and find, like any other personal strife, a way around, a way to cope.
Well said. What role does art and creativity play in confronting the absurd?
Yes.
Can storytelling and literature provide solace or solutions?
Absolutely. Art is very important in the fight against the absurd. It is a vastly ambiguous, organic, physical manifestation of man's will to be free. Art, like life, has meaningless until it is given meaning by the man creating it, by the artist. By creating our own absurd mess, we may apply our own meaning to it. Art cannot be interpreted objectively, just like life. It is an important reflection of the absurd.
Beautiful.
Yes, much focus should be given to art.
And fund art more.
Oui.
If you were to reflect on today's world, do you believe your ideas about the absurd and human existence still hold the same weight, and how?
Absolutely. 2024 is classic year. We have this thing I discovered since coming back from the grave. We have this thing called the internet. And I see these videos called brain rot. This is a reflection about the people making the brain rot of the absurd. We find this absurdity and we turn it into comedy and put it on Instagram Reels so that everyone else may reflect on. In the same way that we use traditional art to reflect these things, people now cope with it in more modern ways with social media and public interaction. It's very, very relevant today, especially with the authoritarian threats in the free world.
Agreed. That brings me to my next question. In today's world, one might find it easy to fall into a negative, pessimistic, and cynical state. How would you find hope in the cynical state in the world we live in today?
I would tell you, Kyle, right it's severe so far, by the way. Really good questions. In my time before college, I was a journalist in World War II. I write for a magazine, a newspaper called Combat. I go through World War II. I see war. I see the victims of it. I see how it affects people. Much like war, today in this world, we live through a very chaotic time, very unprecedented political climate. So in the same way that I deal with absurdity through the World War II, the world to end all wars and end in nothing, you must cope with modern issues. The modern
absurdity.
We could not have said it better myself. Give him the Nobel. You should be Nobel laureate.
How do you define true freedom within the framework of the absurd?
That's a good question. Personal pursuit of happiness. As we reflect on in the earlier question you asked me about the pursuit of happiness. I believe personal freedom is the way to this in a modern world, and you must focus on yourself and your loved ones. The rest of the world is a mess. It's always a mess. You cannot do nothing about it. Personal freedom is your liberation in absurdity. Yes.
Oui.
Oui.
Last question for you, Camus. What message or insight would you most like readers and
That's
thinkers
me.
to take away from your work?
I think most importantly, the biggest question I pose as a philosopher, and you will know this if you've studied my work from when I was alive. My biggest question, the biggest question that man must face with himself is, sorry to be dark, this is my whole philosophy, whether or not you should kill yourself is really the question to life and finding happiness. In the myth of Sisyphus, we confront this head on. I pose a very important question in this book about meditation on suicide. The ability to not kill yourself is unavoidable. My personal advice to anyone who's interested in my philosophies, or with confronting the absurd nature of Earth, must understand that you must keep going.
One must imagine Sisyphus happy.
One must
so-
imagine Sisyphus happy. And the whole meaning of this is exactly what
Push through life.
read the book.
absurdity.
Read my read my book to tell you everything you need to know. Read my book. And I will tell you. Thank you for having me. I have had a very good time in this world. I kind of wish it was still the 60s. Time to go back to Paris and lay back down in my grave. The great necromancer.
Thank you for coming back
Kyle.
from the dead for this
Thank
one
you,
interview.
grand necromancer Kyle, for reviving me to life for this interview.
Call me Frankenstein.
I've lost my